I'll ask it. The contrast, by its nature, is not comfortable.
Contrast by its nature is fantastic.
That's what I would like to feel more.
Fantastic. So you go to a buffet and they've got two things. You can have that or that. I think I'll go to another buffet where they have more to choose from. So call contrast choices. Call it variety rather than contrast. It's variety. Because the only thing that makes contrast feel bad is your poor choice.
I'm not getting that. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Really good, wasn't it? What makes contrast not feel good is choosing poorly. And what does choosing poorly really mean? I've chosen different from who I really am and what I really want. In other words, when you find fault with someone and you feel that negative emotion, you've chosen poorly. Your inner being never chooses poorly. And that's a wonderful thing, because your inner being is always a vibrational match to the furthest, most expanded part of you. And when you choose less than that, so contrast in and of itself conceptually is a really good thing. Call it variety. But diverging from my furthest, most expanded beingness doesn't feel good. So don't call it contrast that doesn't feel good. It's choosing a vibration that doesn't allow the fullness of who I am that doesn't feel good. What's going to happen to you? After you've spent a few days, and you will, it is our promise to you, more substantially every day flying high, and the benefit of it you'll find yourself clearer about things than you've ever been, more coordinated, more words on the tip of your tongue, more satisfaction in conversations with friends, just a more dynamic, more good feeling, exhilarating life, just like you intended when you came. And you've all had those experiences, so you know what we're talking about. But more consistently, and therefore more deliberately, you'll be feeling that. And then when that contrast comes and you slip a little bit, you're right, intolerable. In fact, Esther wrote the word intolerable. I will not tolerate this. And she's talking to herself. Why go there and feel this way when that choice is available? And then what comes is a determination, a sort of mindset that, well, I know what to do. First, I'll choose it every morning, do my best to do that every day. That's simple enough. I can do that. And then I'll be aware of how I feel, how I'm feeling. And if I catch myself moving down a train of thought that doesn't feel so good, then I'll draw it back from it and focus somewhere else. And I'll just pay attention. Once you are solidly feeling good, then when variety comes, it doesn't knock you off your disc. It's variety in the way that you meant it to be. It's choices again. Esther has had a thought since Jerry made his transition that when she would come across it, it was painful, unpleasant to her. And it often got going before she could catch it, and then she would have some time of discomfort. And so she's been trying to distract herself, trying to keep herself busy, just trying to avoid that thought, just trying to avoid it. Oh no, I'm not going there. Off she would go. And so the other day, a friend called. And she was visiting with this friend, and they were talking about these things, high-flying things. They were using words like invincible and the power of the universe and leverage and doesn't it feel good? And they'd brought themselves to a place of really feeling good. They're good friends, and they were having a good conversation. And then they were laughing about something, and one or the other of them said, they're going to lock us up because we are sort of irrationally happy.
Good for them.
And then Esther remembered working at a state hospital when she was a teenager, and in the state hospital there being places where people really were locked up, and so she got this vision of this place where they were locked up and they were in there together just having a really good time, and her friend said, yeah, and people are walking by and they're saying, oh, don't mind them, they're like and Esther and her friend were relishing the idea of being the crazy ones that no one understood, because it's kind of like that, isn't it? You're like the crazy ones that no one understands. And Esther said, yeah, and they'll slip food under the door to us. And her friend said, yes, and we'll think we manifested it.
Whoa.
And on it went. You had to be there. But on and on and on and on it went. And so this was maybe the funniest conversation that lasted about half an hour that Esther had ever experienced. They were laughing so hard they could not understand what the other one was saying. They had to say, well, I can't understand you. You've got to stop laughing because I can't understand what you're saying. It was that kind of fun. So then later that day, Esther tried to replay as much of it as she could to her daughter Tracy in a conversation. And then she's laughing about it all over again. And she went to bed laughing out loud. While she's by herself, laughing out loud, laughing out loud. And when she awakened the next morning, the first thought that was in her mind, and it was annoying to her, because she's been on the high-flying disc, on the high-flying disc, on the high-flying disc, on the high-flying disc. She certainly expected to wake up on the high-flying disc. And when she woke up, that thought that has been plaguing her was in her mind, as if her inner being were saying to her, you might want to now examine this from your high-flying disc. You might want to lay some new pipes from your high-flying disc. So you're going to get pretty good at realizing that every thought you have that's contrasting doesn't have to feel bad. It can be clarifying. In other words, sometimes in your most aligned state, something else comes into it because it is the same subject. And even though there's resistance in that subject, this is the time for you to lay new pipes about it. You see what we're getting at? And oh, did she ever lay new pipes? In other words, when that thought occurred to her, she realized, I don't ever have to feel that way about that ever again. I can look at this through these new eyes. I can see this through the eyes of Source now. She had never seen that through the eyes of Source. And anytime you look at anything not through the eyes of Source, it always feels intolerable by comparison. You see what we're getting at? So you can't get it wrong. You never get it done. You can't get it wrong. You never get it done. But we want to say to you, it's supposed to be way more fun than most of you are letting it be. It's supposed to be way more fun. We want you to vacillate from so funny you can't tell what the other one is saying to interesting. Just stay up there, mostly, and dip a little for clarification every now and again. You've been through phase 1, folks. You don't have to go back to phase 1. You don't have to justify or rationalize or defend. And most of all, you cannot explain it to anybody. And those on your disc get you. So if you're on the Omri disc and they're getting you, then what's to talk about anyway? They got you so much, they're there with you. Having the experience with you. That's why you're complaining together. So then Esther began trying to discover the distinction. What's the distinction between complaining and making a request? And we say, big distinction, isn't it? Complaining about something is far different than making a request of the universe. You can stay on your high-flying disc while you're requesting, but you got 17 seconds to decide if it's a request or a complaint. And you can tell by the way it feels, by where it goes next. This was really a good discussion.
I agree.
Yeah. Enough?
Yes and no, but I think that's good.
Good. All right. Now what?